In 2014, indie game developer Omocat started a GoFundMe for their game Omori, a psychological RPG horror game in 64-bit top-down view. 6 years later, in December 2020, Omori became available to play. The game's Steam description reads, "Explore a strange world full of colorful friends and foes. When the time comes, the path you've chosen will determine your fate, and perhaps the fate of others as well." To me, Omori is a beautiful game about trauma and unhealthy ways of dealing with it. And in this video, I want to explore the hauntology of Omori, how the game uses its characters, music, and the player to create such a haunting game. In the game, you start as Omori in a white room known as White Space. It consists of a laptop, a box of tissues, a black cat, a notebook, a pitch black light bulb, and a door that leads out to a treehouse in which your three friends, Kel, Aubrey, and Hiro, are waiting for you to go on a picnic with your older sister Mari and fourth friend Basil in a dreamlike land known as Headspace. After the prologue, going back into Headspace, you learn that Basil has gone missing, and you, Kel, Aubrey, and Hiro venture to find him throughout Headspace. Often the gang is faced with creatures to battle like sprout moles and bunnies, which commence a Pokemon-style fighting sequence. There are also a myriad of boss battles while the storyline progresses. There is also this constantly looming black figure with one cold eye that is referred to as something. After finishing the first main boss of the game, you are greeted with another black screen that says 3 days left, and you wake up in bed to a new character named Sunny in a new setting, Faraway Town, which is presumably the real world. After waking up, there are two options that the player can take. There will be a knock at the door. The voice on the other end is Kel. He tells you he notices the for sale sign outside your house and asks to hang out. If the player chooses to open the door, they begin the route known as the Truth Route with Kel, or they can ignore it and be on the Hikikomori route. For the purpose of this project, I will only be talking about the Truth Route. Throughout the Truth Route, while exploring, you slowly learn more and more about Sunny, how he has not left his house in 2 years following his older sister Mari's suicide and the rift that it brought to the friend group. You also learn about the missing photos in your group's old photo album. You learn Sunny and Mari are musically gifted, with Sunny playing violin and Mari playing piano. You also learn about Sunny's fear of heights, spiders, and water. Each time going to sleep will bring you back to Headspace to continue the search for Basil and the haunting and eerie figure of something. However, as the adventure progresses in Headspace, the gang begin to forget their quest and what Basil even looks like. After the last adventure in Headspace, Omori is sent to venture alone in a new setting, Black Space, a mirror opposite of our first in-game setting. Multiple doors are littered about Black Space, each door a different haunting nightmare setting. Some doors have Basil behind them, excited to see Omori, believing he has been saved. However, each attempt to save him ends in a gruesome death. After experiencing every door, a new door with a glowing red light appears, and entering it leads to a church where Basil is being held. Once reaching him, Omori kills him and sits on a throne of red hands, showing the player that the antagonist of the game has been Omori all along. Sunny is then woken up and the player is welcomed to another black screen reading 1 day left. Back in Faraway Town, Kel, Sunny, Aubrey, and Hiro all reconcile and go to Sunny's home for one last reminiscence of their lost childhood. They all agree to have a final sleepover at Basil's house. To the group's dismay, Basil refuses to leave his room, but the group sleeps over anyways. When Sunny falls asleep, the player is Sunny as opposed to usually being Omori. While asleep, Sunny is face to face with Omori. Sunny destroys the pitch black light bulb, which has been the physical representation of Sunny's suppression of the truth. This is when the player finally sees the truth, that this something figure that has been following them is Mari's hanged corpse. The player learns Mari did not commit suicide. The truth is, during an argument, Sunny pushed her down the stairs, accidentally killing her on the day of their recital. Basil had arrived and witnessed everything, and to help his friend, they arranged it as a suicide. The overwhelming guilt caused Sunny to lock himself away and create Headspace. This revelation wakes Sunny up and finds Basil distressed and suicidal in the bathroom with a pair of gardening shears. Sunny, in an attempt to calm him down, in a brutal fight, is struck in the eye by Basil, and the two boys are rushed to the hospital. While in transit, Sunny remembers the good times he had with his friends and starts to heal his trauma. He returns to white space to see Omori, commencing a battle between the two. Omori berates Sunny throughout the battle, and Sunny loses, prompting the player with a game over screen and asking if they wish to retry. Clicking yes brings the player back to the battle with Sunny getting up to play his violin and playing a duet that he was destined to play with his sister Mari before she died. Omori then fades away and Sunny wakes up in the hospital. He goes to Basil's room where Kel, Aubrey, and Hiro are standing by Basil's bed when he also wakes up. Sunny says, "I have to tell you something," and the game concludes. There is a term conceived by Sigmund Freud called Nachtraglichkeit, which translates to afterwardness. This psychological concept is described by Freud as the process of a memory arousing an effect which it did not arouse as an experience, because in the meantime, the change from the early self that experienced the event to the current one that remembers it had made possible a different understanding of what was remembered. In Rahimi's book, The Hauntology of Everyday Life, he connects this concept with Derrida's version of hauntology. Rahimi writes, "The part of the actual experienced event or sensed thing that fails to make it to the mental or linguistic object and which stays back to lurk somewhere below the symbolic register. The traumatic event, in fact, has remained a non-event because of the traumagenic elements that remained outside the subject's domain of symbolic interpretation/understanding. As a result, the event is not in a position to affect any consequences. Not until a version of the subject comes along that is capable of recognizing and decoding the missing eventuality of the event and channels the dormant event into the realm of meaning and consequence, and hence giving it the voice to claim and demand a consequence, using its newly gained power as a legitimate part of the symbolic order." To tie this back to the game, Omori is this creative version of Sunny's psyche to process his trauma. Sunny is not Omori, and Omori is not Sunny. However, Sunny is in a state of repression throughout the time you play as him. It isn't until after you beat Omori he is out of this afterwardness and is finally one with his personification of guilt and repression that is Omori. The fight between Sunny and Basil was the arousing effect for Sunny. Omori has a vast soundtrack of 179 songs that span over 4 hours. In Mark Fisher's Ghost of My Life, writing on depression, hauntology, and lost future, there is a quote of his that I feel I interpret differently. Fisher writes, "Hauntology is a question of hearing what is not here." I relate this to some of the music in Omori's soundtrack, are iterations of each other. There are a lot of examples of this, but my two favorite examples are Lost in a Sleepover and Friends. And White Space and Black Space. Both Friends and Black Space play in the darker parts of Omori. They are also both haunting versions of the first real songs in the game. I feel these examples might not be what Fisher initially intended with this quote, but I feel because that in these songs are what the there is a hearing what is not here. There is a sense of expectation of the music, a style and feeling of happiness or emptiness with White Space is a familiarity that is missing. We are not hearing that familiarity with the songs because it is not there. Omori's faraway town music gives off music you'd hear in the 90s, despite the 2020 release year. Fisher's book also goes into the Caretaker's album, Memories from a Haunted Ballroom. He describes the album as having the sounds of the 20s despite the release in 1999. Omori uses this technique for world building. A game the characters play is called Jash Bash. The music in it and the system it plays on feels out of the 90s. They did this to put Omori's time period ambiguous, so the player can connect Omori to those nostalgic feelings of childhood, which leads us into the next chapter. The game of Omori uses the player's nostalgia in multiple ways. System-wise, with its 64-bit top-down view and older Pokemon-style fighting sequences. and story-wise, the ambiguous time frame of when this all took place. These things combined gives the player a security through nostalgia, concealing the game's true darker undertones. This is a relatively new phenomenon called gourd play in low-res horror games. A Fangora article by Dan Whitehead notes. The low-res gaming scene feels like it has much in common with recent cultural movements such as Hauntology, which uses the aesthetics of 1970s graphic design, public information films, and mournful shock music to conjure dislocated and melancholy art that hits particularly hard for Generation X and middle age. Both low-poly horror gaming and hauntology media rely on a shared sense of something dark and sad lurking in the remnants of pop culture age that was experienced only briefly in early childhood, and whose media production methods now seem ancient and abandoned. Story-wise, Omori uses the player's nostalgia for the reveal of something in Omori being the antagonist all along. Going back, the player is unaware of what something is. In turn, while haunting Sunny, it haunts the player too. Candidly, when I played Omori, I became attached to Sunny/Omori. Exploring Faraway Town with Kel, Aubrey, and Hero reminded me of how I played with my friends when I was little. Sunny is the youngest of his friend group, and so was I, so I instantly felt that attachment to him. So after learning the truth, I had to walk away from the game. After finally beating the game, it caused me to confront my own Nachtraglichkeit, without me being aware that it was ever there to begin with. Omori, while haunting, is one of my favorite games. As of right now, I have 345 hours logged into it. The game's uses of haunting is very unique in my opinion, and it uses it to its advantage to create a beautiful and impacting story, using its title character as its trauma-born antagonist, music to create classic nostalgia and unnerving fear, and using the player's emotion with said nostalgia. Omori feels like it uses James Sweeting's hauntology form. The term is a fusion of Derrida's and Fisher's interpretation, agreeing with Fisher that the future is difficult to find, especially when the past has become a core point of reference, but also acknowledges Derrida's insight that the past can impact the present, which in turn can alter the future. Omori falls into this by its system-wise nostalgia, but being able to break and bloom in the 2020s. Omocat, Omori's developers, used hauntology in many ways to create this game, and for that I thank them.